It says it's starting recording and transcription. Can you let me know to turn on the optive transcription?
There would be a way that you could not have allergies.
Picking up, that's for sure.
For sure.
All the trees that don't normally get. It's the rain.
Yeah, the apple trees, hopefully it'll.
Gaston.
We've been with us for 5 years. You only get them about every 5.
Okay, we call the meeting to order at 3 p.m. Roll call. Chair Thomas will be joining us a little bit later.
Oh, no, I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, okay, so you want to run this thing?
Oh, no, I think it just might be better since you're there. It was too tight with me getting back here and back over there. I couldn't make it in
Okay.
time.
So Chair Thomas is here, Co-Chair Fox is here, Commissioner Norton,
Here.
Commissioner Cluin,
Here.
Commissioner Joyce,
Here.
Commissioner Wallen,
Here.
Commissioner White,
Yeah.
Member Spence. Here you are. Thank you. Our land acknowledgement statement. The Flagstaff Open Space Commission humbly acknowledges the ancestral homelands of this area's indigenous nations and original stewards. These lands, still inhabited by native descendants, border mountains sacred to the indigenous peoples. We honor them, their legacies, their traditions, and their continued contributions. We celebrate their past, present, and future generations who will forever know this place as home. Item 4, approval of the April 28, 2025 minutes. Oof. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any edits, additions, deletions, corrections? None heard. All those in favor of accepting the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Abstentions? Minutes are approved. Item 5, public comment. At this time, any member of the public may address the commission on any subject that is not scheduled before the commission on this day. Excuse me. The Arizona open meeting law prohibits the commission from discussing or taking action on an item which is not listed on the prepared agenda. Members may, however, respond to criticism made by those addressing the commission, ask staff to review a matter, or ask that a matter be placed on a future agenda. To address the commission on an item that is on the agenda, please wait for the chair to call for public comment at the time the item is heard. Given that, is there any public comment? Okay, thank you. Item 6, business items. Open Space Education Program update. Ashley. Oh, there's you.
Do I go up now?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So I made a presentation for you all because I think sometimes it's nice to see pictures when I'm talking about what I've been doing with the kids. Like, I just think the pictures really enhance it. So hi, my name is Ashley Flinney. I'm the open space educator with our very small open space team. And I made a presentation about the 2024-2025 kind of fiscal and school year, some things that I've been doing. And I thought because there's a couple new faces, I started back in August, and I know I introduced myself then, but I thought I'd do a why did Robert and Sylvia want me to work with them? So I've been working with kids for as long as I can remember. I've ran multiple after school programs. I've subbed. I've done stuff with kiddos with IEPs, a lot of coaching, different sports, as a big athlete. And for the past 11 years, environmental education has been my passion and my career. I've worked in Yosemite National Park, Idaho, Kansas, Northeast Georgia, Central Texas. So a lot of seasonal, residential, overnight programs. I've taken kids rafting, backpacking, caving, biking, climbing, anything you can do with kids outdoors with focusing on STEAM education. And a lot of like outdoor leadership is another thing that I really enjoy. So working here and getting to kind of do this urban face to it, I thought was really neat. Yeah, so that's who I am. Yeah, so this year we have served 2,838 individuals. Actually, just today I taught 68 more kids, so we can add 68 to that just a couple hours ago. But yeah, so we have been doing high quality, engaging, safe academic activities with all these individuals. And as you can see, a little over 1,500 of those have been youth. And by youth, I mean pre-K, so 3, 4-year-olds all the way up to seniors in high school. And those individuals, those could be parents and guardians, those are teachers, those are community members who are also learning. And I wanted to kind of highlight those adults too. Like, yes, they're not the youth, but those are the adults that are going to be taking their kids to our open space properties. Those are the teachers that are going to be seeing us and wanting us to continue the partnerships with them. So I think it's really important to highlight them. Also, the parents like seeing the schools just as much as the kids do when we do our booths. So yeah, so while providing these opportunities for all youth is important, our work, like my work and the things we've been doing has really been focusing on some of those underserved and underrepresented kids. So I'll kind of talk a little bit more about the actual schools and kids we work with. I just wanted to highlight that we're really trying to make it possible and show kids everywhere that they belong in the outdoors and that these open space properties, so Observatory Mesa, McMillan Mesa, Picture Canyon, and then I throw in a few other city ones like Buffalo Park or some of the Foots Trails also get kids out there, but showing them that there are these like accessible free spaces close to them and that they can go there. I also thought with pictures I'd give a little like what's going on. So part of it is providing resources for kids. So things like binoculars and watercolors doesn't seem like a big thing, but a lot of these kids don't just have these at home, or it might be hard for teachers to provide those. So just enhancing our walks with little things like that is great. And then you can see them walking by the big snag tree at Picture Canyon. A lot of kids are always like, why do you guys keep these dead trees around? So just walking by something, all these teachable moments are also great. So I gave you the statistics for the kids, but I'll kind of break it down on what we're doing with them. So this year alone, August to up till 2 weeks ago, we've done 50 different field trips. 40 of those are actually the trips where we're going to the different properties. So those 3 plus Buffalo Park that I mentioned. And 10 of those have been classroom visits. Sometimes schools, they're not able to do it. Buses, subs, high schoolers not wanting to go because they have sports practice. So we will also make a point to bring open space to the kids in the classrooms, which I think is just really important because I think testing and stuff in the spring, like we want to make sure that we're helping teachers. Before our field trips, we will also go into the classroom and do a whole what to expect tomorrow. This is how you should dress. This is what you should pack because kids don't always know that, even our older ones. What else I got here? Oh yeah, so our educational booths, those are everything from like Willow Bend Science Saturdays to the Fort Tut Hill STEM Days. I actually have a slide where there's some pictures and I'll talk about like specific things we do with those. But the booths are super fun. And then we did 17 guided hikes this year. A guided hike could be anything from Sylvia will be doing a restoration work and I can come in and do a guided hike at Picture Canyon before we meet Sylvia down at the bottom of a trail and they go and dig trail for 4 hours. We also have like themed hike, like the Arbor Day hike or Archaeology Month in March. I think there was like 50 people that came out for that hike that was led by one of our stewards. So just providing those hikes, super important. Love the full moon hikes. There's one tonight if anyone wants to come join after this. Yeah, so looking at kind of the FUSD, that's been one of our big partners, is trying to provide these field trips. So I thought I'd kind of break down who I worked with this year, and then later on I'll talk about like how we want to expand that. But we're all about the collaborations. Willow Bend does a 3rd grade program. So every 3rd grader, we want them to have an opportunity to go to Picture Canyon. So I know in the fall alone, there were 18 classes and 542 kids that were able to go to Picture Canyon. So that's with, I don't even know the stats yet for this spring, but that was 542 kids who got to go out there with them. One of my favorite field trips I did, that's the picture on the left, was with the cooperative preschool. I took 33 preschool and kindergartners plus 19 parents on a hike of Picture Canyon, which was really cute. And my favorite was while at a booth 3 weeks later, a kid came up to me and was like, "You took us on a field trip." So there was that connection where they're seeing us in different lights, whether it's a booth or a field trip. We also will do stuff like Thomas Elementary came and did some trail restoration with us. So we did a guided hike, and then they came out and put a bunch of cinders on like a lower spot of the trail that was getting muddy. So you get to teach these kids like, why did trail restoration work? Why don't we want to go off trail? The important things. That middle school, I've worked with 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade science classes and MEMS. So 7th graders, we did a whole water quality thing at Picture Canyon where we measured the velocity. I got them a guided tour of the water treatment plant. Sylvia took them to the waterfall, and we also like studied the velocity of the river. The 8th graders, we went to McMillan Mesa and did natural selection. So the teacher said, "We're learning this next week. Can you do a field trip that gets them excited about this future lesson, incorporate our old lesson on genetics, but also make it local?" And I was like, "Yeah." So we studied like symbiotic relationships. We looked at the squirrels and the ponderosa pines. We looked at dwarf mistletoe and like parasitism. And it was super fun. Made a Jeopardy game afterwards. And then with high school, I've done a couple stuff with Flagstaff High School. So the honors biology, we did Simpson's Index and Biodiversity at McMillan Mesa, had 5 different groups come out, earth science, studying geology and water. So we're able to provide either lessons we've made, or we can customize it for the teachers, which I know really helps, because not only are kids reading it in books, but they get to go out to these areas and see it in real life, and not only see it in real life, but see it happening like in Flagstaff, like in these places that they can go and visit again and again. Which I really like. And then Summit, that's the alternative high school. I've been working with them anywhere from 2 to 3 times a month with the PE class and the student services class, student success. So just trying to show some of these kids who probably never leave Flagstaff and maybe don't have a bunch of opportunities, where there are some safe green spaces for physical activity, mental activity. And then I throw in some learning things like that compass you saw in the very first picture. I developed an orienteering course for them. So tricked them with some math, but also some physical education, and showing them that like orienteering, you can geocache. If you go backpacking, like use this in the future. We did some trash cleanups. We've done a lot of leave no trace lessons. So if you're going to be in Flagstaff, like how do we take care of it? So the next round of high schoolers that come through will also enjoy these spaces. Something exciting, visiting school programs. So Chandler High School came up from the Valley. It was 2 photography classes. So they had to come up here, find different things to photograph. And while doing it, I just did a guided hike, pointed out things that they were interested in, things that I was interested in. And it was a final project for them. So I think this is a really cool opportunity. We have these visiting schools come. These might be people that when they're adults or when they go to college, they're coming up to Flagstaff. They're going to be the tourists, the visitors here. So if we're like having them see how special it is high school, like they'll want to take care of it when they come visit later. Having interest from other schools. I know Tuba City. I've been talking to a couple teachers down in Sedona, getting maybe like the Verde Valley School, doing some stuff up here. So I think that's another like part of the program that we can do. And then we partner a lot with other organizations. So Big Brothers Big Sisters, Boys and Girls Club, Flagstaff Community Explorers. We're just enhancing what they're already doing and kind of like working with their missions, but showing them how they can use our properties as part of their programs. I think that's all I've got for that one. Back to the community events and booths. This is one of my favorite things to do. Willow Bend, I don't know if anyone's been to their Science Saturdays, but every first Saturday of the month from like 9:30 to 11:30, there's a theme already done, and I love to do the booth there. It's a lot of littles, so 2, 3-year-olds up to like maybe 9 or 10. So you got the real littles. That's kind of the middle picture. There's Cole, the AmeriCorps intern, and myself doing some petroglyphs simulations with them. We also will do FUSD STEAM nights. So on the right, you'll see a little girl with these booths. Not only am I doing activities, but I was like, these are animals that you'd find at Picture Canyon. So trying to highlight our different open space properties, but kind of weave them into the themes. So she's looking at signs of ways to see wildlife when she's out there. Or Sylvia on the left, that was the Loop STEM Fair. So that was kind of concentrating on careers. So we talked a little bit about like what you could do in open space. And then we had the kids making seed balls that they could go and plant native plants in their own community. They're in high schoolers. I would talk about guerrilla gardening, but I didn't want to get too crazy with them. And then we do like community STEM events. So Fort Tuthill did that giant one a couple of weeks ago. They said they had 1,300 people come join. There was 150 booths. Robert and I were just going crazy, showing schools left and right. But just another cool way for us to get involved. And my hope is to kind of join more and more of those community events, because then people see us, we're able to connect with teachers and students. Like I said, I had a student come up to me and recognize me from a field trip. So I think that's really great that they're starting to make those connections. And then for guided hikes, yeah, so those are full moon hikes that we do. Got the bike ride coming up. I think that's July. And then I know Sylvia and I have been talking, I kind of want to get some more guided hikes going that are youth focused. So like our Tarantula Trek October one, the day before, doing one for the youth, like in the afternoon when the tarantulas are usually out. Yeah, so a big part of this has been all the partners that we work with. So these 11 partnerships are kind of ones that we've had for a little bit now and we keep them going, but we're always making new ones. A few of those to mention are like NAU, whether it's AmeriCorps, the Fire Ecology Lab, City of Flagstaff, sustainability and water services we do a lot with. So I've had them come out and like lead a group while I'm leading another group. Arizona Game and Fish, Coconino Forest Service, Flagstaff Festival Science. We always do an event. We're going to do an ethnobotany walk with some field drawings in September 26th. If anyone wants to join. The AZT, the Seeds of Stewardship, or is it Stewardship of Seeds? Seeds of Stewardship. So that when I was earlier talking about those kids doing the trail work. So we're doing a lot of work with them. Willow Bend, like I was saying earlier, they're the ones. We have that partnership. They bring every third grade out. We're going to keep that going. So that's kind of hitting the elementary age, going to our properties. And then NECNA, the Nature's Educators Coalition of Northern Arizona, is a really great coalition started. We have 98 individual people in part of this coalition through multiple organizations, all the ones I mentioned, plus like, I don't even know, Tinkertopia, Tinker Garden, all the different things. And we have a website, which I think Robert can put in the chat, or it's in the link there. With all the lesson plans. So we just wanted to have one place for all of these like nature-based educators in Flagstaff, because we have so many. It's such a great town with all of the STEM and nature-based things. So now there's a website with, you know, all the lessons on there, summer camps that are on there, educational trunks that you can check out. And then we also do quarterly meetings where we check in with each other, make sure, you know, people aren't doing the same exact event. Hey, come help at this event, come have a booth at this event. So it's a really great partnership. Y'all should check out the link, necna.org is all it is. So looking ahead, this summer is already jam-packed. One of my goals for this summer is I wanted to kind of connect with our own city organizations. So the different rec centers. I have 8 weeks, about 8 lessons that I'll be doing with Hal Jensen and the Aquaplex. They both do summer camps. So a mix of doing on-site location things. So again, kind of almost like the classrooms, bringing open space to them if they can't leave, and doing field trips. Other youth programs to like Boys and Girls Club and the Flagstaff Community Explorers, just helping them with their hikes, leading, guiding. Arizona Watchable Wildlife has an event in July called the Bug Out event, where we'll have a booth for things like that. So that's kind of the summer. And then with the school year, kind of continuing things we already have with Summit, Flagstaff High School, and MEMS, but I also hope to kind of reach out to Coconino High School. I want to get Sonawa Middle School, try to get them involved. And I've also had the FACS after school program, 7 of the 10, I think, have already reached out and really interested in having us go and visit. So leading field trips and again, visiting. And then of course, community events and guided hikes. So getting those booths out there, getting those hikes going. Last notes, this is straight from our strategic plan, like our goal for doing this, like why we're doing this, why hire me, why have me go out there and do this, is we want to inspire and educate youth and adults about nature, conservation, the importance of open space, so they become stewards of the land and familiar with the places for use to improve their lives. So knowing that these places are here, that they're available to them. They're free. It's a place to go for mental, physical, all the O's that are important. It encourages careers in STEM education, future STEM jobs. And then again, kind of that awareness for open space and the community and the benefits that they get them from. And how we're hoping to do that is to continue all those things I kind of had in that last slide, looking forward. But also we want to start in 3rd grade and we want to see them again in 7th grade and see them again in 10th grade, so that we're kind of part of that continuous academic journey that they have. So they're always seeing us as they go through. There's a lot of different, I could quote and stat and all this stuff, the different benefits of that longevity of working with them, but that's kind of the cool. Oh, David Sobel's cool. He's like the philosophy, he does the philosophy behind place-based education. So I think like, I was thinking about our goal, and anytime I've worked at any of my jobs, like if we want kids to care and become those stewards, they have to like know they're safe. They have to like feel good. They have to like where they're at. So I think it's just a great quote. We can't ask them to take care of it until they like love where they're at. Any questions?
Yeah,
Great job.
thank you. I have questions. You mentioned demographics, you had age and some of the schools that you've gone from. Do you have any more specifics on the demographics in terms of age class distribution or, excuse me, ethnic diversity in the?
Haven't like necessarily collected that. Like I don't like go in and like have them fill something out, like, you know, how many of the kids are this, how many are this. I do think like you could, yeah, I don't really have those. I know like working for like with Summit, with it being an alternative high school, you do tend to get a lot more of those like underserved kiddos at that school, which is why I've been trying to work with them as regularly as possible. But I'm sure if I could probably like look at the school's demographics, I'm sure that's somewhere, and just draw it from there.
Okay. Couple other maybe potential partnerships, like you don't have enough. One would be maybe Camp Colton
Oh, yeah.
and then the Diablo Trust.
Oh, okay.
That's that meeting that I went to.
Yes, that'd be great.
It might be interested. And I used to encourage / require forestry students to do this, that have different exercises on mindfulness.
Yep. Yeah, we'll do silent sits like when we get to places.
Yeah, they at first thought it was stupid, but
My high schoolers did this, they were like, ugh. And then I was like, all right, 3 minutes is up. And well, we could sit longer. I'm like, no, we can't, bus is coming.
and then the last one is, how can we help?
Oh.
Yeah, I would love to comment on this.
And that's if we're gonna do anything.
Thanks so much for the.
Yeah, like we can always use, keep volunteers to help wrangle kids, because sometimes we have 50 or 60 kids. And so we might send out an email saying we have this event coming up and we need help with the kids. There's some field trips in June that Ashley is unable to do, but they're with Hal Jensen Recreation Center, the Aquaplex, and the Flagstaff Community Explorers, the littles. The littles are so cute. So we're looking for volunteers. We already have one volunteer for 3 of those, but we're looking for like another volunteer for each of those. So if you love working with little kids, or you love talking about bugs, or you love talking about geology, what's the other one?
Forest health.
Forest health and fire burns and stuff like that.
Do you provide, like if we were doing a section,
I would literally just be like, here you go.
because I'm a real mom from way back when, so I would.
I will have everything ready to go. I would even meet people beforehand. I've done that with the stewards who had to help. I was like, let's meet a couple days before, walked all of Pitcher Canyon with them and was like, here's what you can teach about, made them visuals and cards. Yeah, I wouldn't ask anyone to just show up unless you wanted to. But
I guess I was going to ask a similar question as far as what are you currently doing to recruit volunteers for events, and how can we supplement or guide people towards that? Or
so we're using the volunteer database that got rolling earlier a couple months ago. So we have the calendar. Anytime there's a event, we get it on the calendar, we email the stewards.
volunteer.flagstaffaz.gov. Ashley, if you go back 2 slides.
Sure.
Look at the hula.
Yeah, I got so excited. I forgot to talk about all my pictures. So the hula hoop, that was, so there's 2 different lessons you can do with that one. That one was, we're studying like Simpson's Index, which is looking at species biodiversity. So kids will turn around, you throw a hula hoop because you're talking about like, you can't just like pick, I want to study this site because there's more flowers. So randomizing. And they throw it and there's up in McMillan Mesa, there's a bunch of disturbed areas from when, they were building roads. So they'll count the species in a real disturbed area, which you tend to get a lot more invasives and not a lot of biodiversity. And then we'll kind of walk around to the other end of the mesa and then again, toss it and throw it and then they'll find more. And then if they're older, like high school, we've got math equations they can do, tables they can fill out, they can create visuals with it. We also will have them look at not only disturbed areas, but maybe under trees versus the open meadow. That's what we did for our 8th grade natural selection. So we were studying competition as part of that. The bottom one, the kids were measuring, a teacher had asked me, well, we're learning velocity next week. And I was like, I can teach velocity. In case you're wondering, the Rio de flag does not move very fast. So sometimes the kids are like, Miss Ashley, the leaves are going backwards. I was like, measure it. But they were studying the velocity there. And then on the right, that's my Summit High School group from last week. And they were looking at the water quality. They had already done a tour of the water treatment plant. So some kids were testing right where it came out. Some were testing down after it had gone through like leaves and the rush and all that stuff. That's what that is.
I want to do velocity, have them do it at the waterfall.
They like to get real close anyways.
Mr. Spence?
As I understand, Camp Colton has an aspirational goal of getting each and every 6th grader on Camp Colton. And I heard you say you're working with 3rd graders. So is it your goal to get to every 3rd grader?
Yep, that's what we're doing with Willow Bend right now. So they provide a field trip for every 3rd grader in that USD, right? That's usually.
Yeah, any teacher that signs up to do it. So it's not necessarily every class.
Yeah, that's what it is.
A beautiful scheme to be sure every child at least has that exposure. So you're doing it for 3rd grade. Camp Colton's trying to do it for the 6th grade. And I think that'll give us a more informed, active population.
Yeah.
Eventually.
And the goal is to like even get high schoolers involved in there too.
I really like how creative you've been when you've had requests to incorporate different, the fact that a teacher has taught this subject and is going to teach that subject. Well done.
Yeah, thank you. Exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, your work is so important. It really is, and so appreciated by all of us. But one of the most important things that you're doing is developing a pride of ownership in open space and natural areas. Not just a user, not, oh, this is something I can use, but it's natural, that it's there to be protected and to appreciate. That's so important. It seems that as we become big metropolitan areas, people come out and say, oh, look at this. I'm going to use it, but not, look at this. This is something unique and it's disappearing in many places. Starting with kids is so important. 2 other possible suggestions. CCC has kids camps through the summer, well funded, so they could probably pay for your coming. And then Lowell Observatory has theirs, and of course it's observatory focused, but the night sky is as natural as anything else. So
Well, it's cool because Observatory Mesa, we share, I love talking about land management. Like, you got Forest Service, you have city property, and you have private property. So it's so neat to get them thinking about land management, how that works.
it just doesn't happen.
Upcoming project with open spaces is Observatory Mesa, so. I was also curious, I'm sure this is a deeper topic. But as far as funding all of these programs and supplies for the kids, like, is there more that we can help with as far as making those connections for, I guess my question is, what is already, avenues of gaining fundraising? Is there?
That's a great leading question. Thank you so much. So our funding for buses and for like material comes out of our base budget, that $47,000 that we rely on for all of our property management. Ashley's position, and she's been doing a really great job, and I think she's taken our program to like the next one. So we want to keep her around, but her position is only funded for 2 years. We have a heritage grant through the Arizona State Parks that is paying for Ashley's time. Prior to this, we relied on the Volunteer and Service to America position, which is like an NAU partnership, full-time volunteer. And we really hit the capacity of like how many times we can reapply for that for the same job, because that's a capacity building partnership for us. And so we have been we did inform the budget team when we were in front of them this past year that we are funded for through, I think, August of 2026, and that it will be a request to like fully fund this position moving forward. So, and that we've been funding it in lots of creative ways prior to this. And so that is something that we hope to achieve. So when we're analyzing our budget this fall, we want the commission's support on that budgetary request. So we hope that is the way that we can fund the position. If that is unsuccessful, we will be looking for additional opportunities, like additional grant opportunities. Unfortunately, this is the second time we applied for the Heritage Fund. Sarah Holditch, who works for events, filled this position prior to Ashley. So this is the third year, and so we are at our capacity for applying for the Heritage Grant as well. So we'll have to find some other type of funding. I know the commission weighed in a little bit on BBB funds. Discover Flagstaff does fund some of their positions with BBB funds. Now there is concern about doing that because of the limited capacity of the BBB funds. So I think we wouldn't want to fund a position, but if we had to, that would be something to consider. And that would be a question for the commission.
So you reach out to FUSD. Do you ever reach out also to the charter schools so that we truly are reaching all of the elementary schools?
That's kind of the next, like right now, we're real focusing on getting that FUSD and that public school thing. And then the next goal, because a lot of times your charter schools and stuff kind of have access. It's a little easier for them to do stuff. So of course we want to reach them all, but we're focusing on these groups first, trying to get the groups that might have a harder time. And then I think I made it like in 5 years. My goal would be to have, FJA basis, the charter schools, and to get them.
Coming out to this site.
Yes.
Any other questions?
Two things. One, thank you for coming in this afternoon and sharing your successes and all the work you do. And secondly, thank you for all the work you do.
Yeah, thank you so much for letting me come up.
Thank you. Next item is the Flagstaff Urban Trail System update.
Thank you.
It's all yours.
Chair Thomas, Acting Chair Fox, members of the commission. Thanks for having me this afternoon. My name is Martin Entz. I'm a transportation planner for the city of Flagstaff. Previously, my title was multimodal transportation planner, which just meant that I took care of things related to walking and biking and trails, including the foots trails. And I've been doing that since about 2006, if you're keeping score at home. I generally try to attend all of your meetings, although typically I've been just one of the little circles there up on the screen. It's actually been a while since I've been here in purpose, and I apologize for that. I like to attend these meetings because the relationship between foots and open spaces like this. So any questions on the nature of that relationship, just like that. So Robert and I talk frequently, Sylvia as well, about cooperative planning. And are you my view?
Yes, I am.
Go to the next slide. So in the course of listening to your deliberations and some of the things you talk about, periodically questions about foots come up. And since it had been a while since I've been here, Robert and I talked about it and thought maybe there's a good opportunity to provide a little bit of background information about how we plan for foots, how foots get implemented, just kind of all the information related to foots to sort of help fill out your knowledge of what you do for the city in regard to open space and how those things work together. So I threw a bunch of slides together. There's a lot of information. It's pretty rambling. It's marginally organized. I'm sure I've forgotten like half of the things that you really want to know about. So we can keep this. I feel like this thing is really kind of formal, but we can keep this fairly informal. And if you have questions as we go along, as you know, things come up, just jump in. Otherwise, I'll talk nonstop. When you go till 8.
You're welcome to stay now.
I'll be
Have an empty house, but.
Like at 7:15.
Next slide. So this is going to be probably repeat information for some of you, and for that I apologize, but we'll get through it. So FOOTS stands for Flagstaff Urban Trail System. By the way, FOOTS is the recommended pronunciation, but we'll accept anything. Boots, butts, points, if you want to imagine it has a little. It's a citywide network of shared use pathways. They're generally 10 feet in width. Some of the older ones are 8 feet. Almost all of them are managed by the city. A couple of notable exceptions are the ones that go out to Fort Tuthill or that are in Fort Tuthill. And there's a couple of what we call foots trails on the NAU campus. The shared use part of it means that they're used by bicyclists, walkers, hikers, runners, and other users, generally non-motorized, although we can have a whole separate conversation about e-bikes and scooters and that sort of thing on another day. Next slide. And, you know, Foots do a whole lot of things for the community. They offer a real range of experiences. So imagine some trails are located along busy roads. Right out of 66 Foots Trail. A lot of them are located along beautiful natural areas, like think just a few miles this way, the Foots that runs along the Sinclair Wash. Both of those are Foots trails, but those are completely different experiences to a user. They connect the community, so places that people want to go, neighborhoods, places where people shop, the campus, places where people work, schools, parks. And they also connect natural areas, so natural areas within town as well as the surrounding forest. And I think maybe most importantly, they serve multiple functions, two principal ones being transportation and recreation. And transportation and recreation are not two mutually exclusive categories. In fact, when it comes to Foots trails, Foots work best when they do both of those things. So like you could be going to work, but it's also a recreational. You're enjoying the outdoors. You're getting exercise. You're enjoying your surroundings. So much the better for transportation in that case.
I have a fund. Are you going to get to funding at all?
A little bit, yes. Yeah. Okay. Remember your question. So really that when we can combine transportation and recreation, we make Foots most successful. So that's always kind of what we work for. That's kind of our ideal. Next slide. A little bit of background just on where we are. We have 59 miles existing. About half of those miles are paved, either in concrete or asphalt, and about half are aggregate surfaced. And real quickly, over the years, we've used a variety of different types of aggregate. This is one of my life's obsessions. Really is like figuring out what kind of aggregate works best and what its characteristics are. We do have 75 miles planned, and although that math doesn't quite work out, that's an ultimate system of about 130 miles. Some of the 75 miles of planned are replacing existing ones, like providing better alignment. So that's why they don't add up to 150 miles. Next slide. And excuse me, this map shows both the planned and the existing. Existing is in the darker purple. Planned is dashed lighter purple. And this comes from the regional plan, although it's not the current existing regional plan, it's the proposed regional plan is what is reflected on this. There are ongoing conversations about how planned foots trails should be depicted on the regional plan. Stay tuned. I know you've probably been involved in some of the discussions around the regional plan. I encourage you to stay engaged in that process.
So this is exactly, I was hoping you would get to this. I wanted to make sure that this was the map that is the current regional plan proposal. I was at the regional retreat being on planning and zoning. So I heard the discussion of, one of the landowners wanted arrows instead of actual depictions of plans. Are they still sticking with just changing the color across private property when it's a proposed foots? Is that where it's still standing as of 2 weeks ago?
That is where it's still standing. I think there are more discussions to be had. As of right now, yes, that direction we got from that retreat, where we are.
Two questions. First observation, on this east side, that the whole area there lacks urban trails, foots trails.
Yes.
That's scary.
Yeah, that's that area is a real challenge because that area was developed. It's the country club basically in Fox Glen and a few other neighborhoods, and it was really developed without any plan for foots trails, and you can see there are none in there. We've tried to add some planned ones that kind of go around the outside just to provide better access for those neighborhoods. It doesn't show it on here, but there are golf courses that wind through that.
Yeah. So maybe that does the job, and that does predate the foots.
Yeah.
The other thing that bothers me with the urban, the regional plan proposal right now, is the inflation of foots and bikeways.
Yeah.
That really worries me. I mean, bikeways is a transportation element. It's not a recreation element, although you get recreation by using it. Whereas the foots is both. And it seemed to lose its connection for one of its purposes, and that is connecting open spaces, schools, parks, and things like that, which foots does. And that was the original idea. Well, I just worry about being put into basically a transportation element thinking.
Yeah, there's a slide coming up that kind of relates to the history of foots trails, and I didn't include it. I thought about including a separate slide that addressed just what you're talking about, kind of that relationship between bikeways and foots trails, and kind of where we started, where we kind of ended up, and where we want to go with that. And I think it addresses some of your comments directly. So when we get to that, again, I don't have a slide for that, but we can talk about that in more detail when we get to that.
Bikeways are transportation elements and very important ones, and they're all season, whereas foots trails is not an all season system, at least many parts of it.
I like the way you think. So just before we go to the next slide, just one last comment about that country club area. We at the city talk about future land uses and plan developments, and we use a lot of terminology that borders on jargon, but the reality is that when development takes place, those are future neighborhoods in Flagstaff. And I look at like the country club area, and my thought is, let's not do that anymore. Let's plan greenways and foots trails. Remember that relationship in all of our neighborhoods, because whatever we're going through now with trying to work this stuff out with development, et cetera, et cetera. People who live in those neighborhoods in the future don't care about that. They want to have access to those facilities. And this is, for a long time, this was a, very strong value in Flagstaff. This has really become a value in every community nationwide. They want access to trails and greenways. And we, kind of led that. We've had it for a long time. I think it's particularly strong here, but these are becoming like basic infrastructure facilities that people want. So think of it that way. These are future neighborhoods. So how are we planning? What is it like? What would it be like to live in those future neighborhoods? What do you have access to?
One other area, just as far as comment and highlight, where it doesn't seem to have a lot of connectivity is in the Linda Vista Sunnyside area map. Being a very densely populated area with a lot of younger families. I don't know if that's part of a future plan that hasn't been added yet, but also seems like an area that's somewhat isolated in terms of transportation.
Yes, most definitely. You can see, like a country club area, there's not a lot of planned trails because there's not a lot of opportunities to run trails. One thing we could do in that area is strengthen other networks like sidewalks and bikeways. And they're not foot trails, but at least they can get you to foot trails more comfortably or more safely. So that's part of it. You can see there's a little bit of lines on a few trails on the east side of McMillan Mesa that go down to
Isabel Street.
yeah, down to Isabel Street. That was kind of our attempt because we knew that Sunnyside didn't have any trails and really few opportunities to add them. So at least we could add them kind of in the periphery. Same with the purple lines around the country club area to at least provide that. And we're looking at, okay, let's build a foots trail from Sunnyside up to the top of the mesa. We're going, okay, there's a handful of trails that people were already using before we built it. We go, okay, which one should we use? And we did as many as we could. There's like I think 3 different connections, 4 different if you count the one up by Coconino High School, just to give the neighborhood as good access as possible. But there might be other things like I think it shows in there, but there's like an opportunity to go through Bushmaster Park, for example. A lot of people already take that as kind of a shortcut. That's not much, but other than that, I think we just need to strengthen other networks to make that better.
Well, I'll let you
People that live there.
continue your, so you can go to the next question.
All right, next slide. Thank you. I appreciate the questions. So over the years, a number of surveys have been done. I'm not going to go into detail on these, but every time we do surveys, it's not uncommon for the community to tell us how important foot trails are to Flagstaff and to what they view as their quality of life. And some of these stats are pretty good, but they're also getting kind of old. Like I think we've gotten one there from 2009, 2010. Now we have done specific surveys of foots users in the past, but not since 2017, just to kind of get an idea of how people use trails, which ones are most popular, what issues they encounter, and that sort of thing. We're probably due again to ask those kind of questions. Next slide. And for those of you who are interested, this is kind of how far back foots go. So all the way back in the 1970s, there was a discussion about pathways in 2 bicycle plans that the city prepared in 1973 and 1979. In 1988, the city convened an ad hoc urban trails committee. A link to history right here amongst us. I don't have the exact quote, but I'm gonna paraphrase. But one of the first lines in the committee's report was, we really got a great opportunity to build a trail system here. Let's start with 3 miles. By golly, they did it. And here we are all these years later. So by 1989, the first trails were built. And then the 3 at the bottom, 1995, 2000, and 2018 are important because they are revenue sources for actually building and maintaining foots trails. And so in 1995, that was really the kind of the watershed when the city actually dedicated a funding stream to building and maintaining foots trails. And then it sort of took off. And I think I'll talk about the bikeway stuff right here. So you can see in the 1970s, the pathways discussion was both appeared in bicycle plans. And at the time, the concept was that on some streets, we build bike lanes, but bike lanes support kind of higher level commuters who are more comfortable being in traffic. And people who didn't want to be on the street, we built a foot trail or pathway alongside the road for them, because then they're more separated from traffic. They're more likely to feel comfortable. For many, many years, that was kind of our plan. And so the foots that go through the woods or through washes or through canyons became kind of conflated with the foots that run along Route 66 or in other places. Although originally these were really two different efforts. We talked about pathways that supported the bikeway network and foot trails that were kind of that off-road connection. More recently, we have kind of changed how we think about bike lanes, and any of you who are cyclists or been to other communities probably know this already, but there's all kinds of different bike lanes now that introduce more separation for bicyclists from traffic. In other words, making those bike lanes more comfortable for more people who want to bike. That kind of relieves or eliminates the need to have a separate foot trail alongside the roadway in that case. So bikeways can become bikeways under this new kind of plan. And they would be on street, they'd be direct, they'd serve a commuting function, they would follow the road network. And foots can go off and do its own thing through the woods and through canyons, et cetera. That isn't to say that foots aren't going to be always an important part of our bikeway network. People will always use them for commuting and getting around, and that's great. That's fantastic. That's as it should be. But I think we can kind of separate those two functions and not continue to build foots alongside roadways like we have in the past.
You've got that condition on 180 where you got the foots in the bike. That'll be grandfathered. You're not gonna mess with that foots, are you?
No, we won't. We won't mess with anything that's existing. So there's a handful of new roads that we're building. Lone Tree Overpass, Butler Avenue, kind of east of Little America, that are going to have separated bike lanes. So the bike lane is physically separated from the roadway. And that makes it more comfortable for everybody. So we don't have to have a foots along there because some people aren't comfortable being in the street. Everybody who wants to ride a bike can be comfortable on that facility. Unfortunately, those things are really expensive to build. So we're kind of limited how much of that we can implement in the short term, at least. Any questions on that or other comments?
Will there also be sidewalks there, Martin? Or would you expect pedestrians to walk in these bike lanes that are separated from the street?
Both the sidewalk and the bike lane will be separate, although they'll be.
Okay. And the sidewalk and bike lane are separate things as well. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, they're physically attached. Like it'll look like a 100-foot width of concrete. There'll be a line that demarks the pedestrian side from the bike side. And the bike side is intended to be directional, so not two-way traffic. And it's on each side of the roadway, so you can two-way traffic can be on each side of the road.
Great. And did you design it that way with feedback from the community? Because I remember when those surveys went out about what the overpass should look like.
Yes. And one of the reasons it ended up being 11 feet is because like an 11-foot continuous of concrete is easier for the city to maintain. Like we can run a pickup truck with a plow on the front of it to clear it of snow, for example.
Okay, great.
But yes, we had between the pedestrian committee and the bicycle committee, we probably talked about it for 6 or 9 months. How to plan for that. We did community surveys and that sort of thing as well.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for reading those community surveys.
I'm curious about the integration with East Butler and I guess, west of Little America, Butler, with this new plan for a, very modern bike infrastructure and how it will integrate with what currently exists in West and Central Butler, which is pretty terrible actually for a cyclist.
Yeah, I've got some questions.
I don't know. I'm not sure how much of the city and Department of Transportation weigh in and support that Because from a funding standpoint, it is expensive, but then you don't have to put in so much infrastructure for cars because you're investing in more people being incentivized to use their bicycles.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. So in central Flagstaff and on Butler, that's going to be redone at some point. We have a grant to separate the sidewalk and the bike lanes, and then east of Little America, as I mentioned, that'll be done as part of the Lone Tree. That leaves the part in the middle. I think part of it is missing a bike lane. Part of it goes through like the I-40 interchange. It's not particularly pleasant. All right, that's all. Yeah, I think we do the best we can. Like, I think we can at some point build a buffer into the bike lane, a bigger buffer into the bike lane on Butler, at least up to the interchange. The city has a kind of a near-term project on rebuilding that interchange. And there's a possibility that we can build separated bike lanes as part of that. Really depends if how traffic works out and what expenses are, but we're kind of constrained in that area because of the bridge abutments. Don't leave much room. Yes.
When I said I had a funding question, it wasn't really getting into the weeds, except let's just take the example of from the museum down to Francis Short Pond. You've got surface repair. I was curious who was responsible for repairing the surface. Then you had an ACE crew down there the other day taking willows out that were encroaching. And then, as I understand it, the weeds and stuff are up to the stewards or with the parks and recs. So I was kind of interested in who pays for different parts of the foots on an ongoing, kind of a maintenance issue.
Maintenance is falls to pros, Parks and Recreation Open Space Events. They still get money through BBB for that maintenance. I think there's somewhere around $200,000 a year that is kind of earmarked for foots maintenance. Outside of the ones that I mentioned earlier that are either on Fort Ted Hill or any youth campus, city maintains all. Foots are a little bit challenging. There's some work that volunteers can do, but a lot of it requires equipment that really isn't conducive to volunteers. So we kind of need crews to do some of the maintenance. Did I answer your question?
Would that willow work be coming from foots, or would it have been coming from Park and Rec?
Probably stormwater would be my guess.
Stormwater, is the flooding, it's still leftover flooding water, the flooding money?
Are they taking willows out?
Yes.
Those things are huge.
Right, and they left them on the trail, which made a challenge. But they can get through, they can.
I guess I'll again let you continue on, but maybe a mental note at the end. I'll grab your contact information, make sure, just because I'm more curious about how those future plans will pan out and how how I can voice cyclists' needs for those projects.
Always happy to. I have a theory as well that if we provide really nice bike facilities on a good part of a road like Butler Avenue, that the parts that are less than ideal won't seem as bad. Now I think that theory falls apart when you talk about like Butler Avenue through the interchange because it is pretty bad. Like I think we have to do more there before we can expect that effect to. Okay, next slide. This was really good conversation. Thank you so much for your questions. Just a few milestones. In 1991, we had 3.5 miles. You can see the progression. By 2025, we have 59 miles. If you kind of do that, kind of on a per year basis, all I can say is that it's a lot more difficult and more expensive to build foothills now than it was for a long time.
That was John Slevas, who was community director at the time. Main point, got to get these things in before or you're going to have a problem. It's just a quick on the history there. That committee was actually 86, 87, not 88. I
think the final report.
The final report, but it existed to work with what was Guide 2000 for the city, which was predates the regional plan type thing. Yeah, and so it was actually part of the planning. And that the first trail that went in was a heritage grant, heritage preservation grant that no longer exists. And it went from Thorpe Road all the way up through Mead to Saturn, where the ditch pool is.
Yeah.
So that's straight. So that is the historic first trail that went in.
I appreciate that context. Is that trail have the romantic name of the Ditch Pool Trail?
Yes, for a while it was, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it became the council lady,
Karen Cooper.
Karen Cooper. Anyways, history.
Okay, next slide. Speaking of the regional plan, like every city in Arizona, Flagstaff is required to adopt a regional plan or a general plan every so many years per state statute. What that referenced is the Growth Management Guide 2000. It's one of the early ones, if not the first, was adopted second in 1988. Followed up in 2001, 2014. 2014 is the current one. And the 2045 one is the one that the city is working on now. Hopefully be adopted by council at some point, and then we'll go to the voters for ratification. But 2030 adopted in 2014 is the one we're working on now. The point here is that all of them have included a map that depicts foot trails. And really, this is kind of the source of our ability to get foot trails implemented. Development comes in or by whatever means. We'll go to the next slide. This is a bit more on kind of the policy context. The city adopted an active transportation master plan in November of 22. It is intended to be a guide for enhancing walking and biking in Flagstaff, and it helps implement the goals and policies in the regional plan for walking and biking, which tend to be very supportive of walking and biking and trails, we might add, but doesn't give you a lot of detail about how actually to do that. So the ATMP is intended to provide. One of the things it does is identifies where we're missing or where we need walking and biking infrastructure like sidewalks, bikeways, foot trails, crossings, bridges, and tunnels, and it prioritizes them. So next slide. And in fact, 5 maps from the ATMP were adopted into the regional plan: sidewalks, bikeways, crossings, enhanced our at-grade crossings, and grade separated our bridges or tunnels, foot trails, and then what we call forest access and trailheads. And we'll take a. So those plans originated in the ATMP, but became part of the regional plan, which gives them more weight, more authority. So that's how we plan for foot trails. Here's how we implement them. There's really 3 different ways that trails get built in the community. One is that they're built as part of private development. A couple slides coming up to show you how that happens. Second, they're built as part of city projects. So for example, the Lone Tree Overpass is building us a nice beautiful foot trail. And then finally, we have standalone foot projects, which we can't foist off on anybody else, that they have to be built, funded and budgeted and that sort of thing. So I've got a few slides on each one of these, but I think it starts with capital. Yeah, there we go. So here are a couple of the really big capital projects the city has going on right now. Beulah University Roundabout, Lone Tree Overpass, Downtown Mile, and the Butler Fourth Corridor. All of them include foot trails. So all of them help implement what we had planned previously for foot trails.
Beulah, University Roundabout.
One in front of Target?
Yes.
There's gonna be a roundabout at Burger King.
Plaza Way.
I'll drive.
Don't drive it, it's really cool. Yeah, it's.
Not Milton and.
Easier draw.
Oh, that's right. Beulah is now extended north.
Yep. And we're up University on one side of Milton, came in up here, and on the other side it came in down here. Now they're continuous roundabout, kind of in the middle of all that. So I've got a map that shows where these are coming up too. So go to the next one. So in private development, our ability to require foot trails in private development derives from the city's zoning code. And this is a specific provision or statement or whatever in the zoning code that lets us do that. So basically, it says that private development has to build needed public improvements. And that can include sewer lines, water lines, roadways, and it specifically mentions foot trails as well. In fact, H there is the actual language, full width trail improvements in accordance with engineering standards through along the full frontage of the property being developed along alignments. And then that last part is the crucial part, indicated in the general plan. So these are trails that are already planned, and the zoning code gives us the ability to include in this part of private development. The part about being in the general plan is important because we can't make up trails. Kind of on the spot and require development to put them in. They have to be planned ahead of time. So that's why having that foots plan, that foots map in those 4 previous versions of the regional plan is so important.
I have a question. So back to that map again, is that consistent? And then maybe this is where also a question for Robert. Is that consistent with our idealized future foots trails in our strategic plan? I mean, does it
Yes.
show everything?
One of the same.
Like you're saying, it's important to get it in there. We don't have a master plan
Yeah.
for open space. So the more that's in the regional plan, the better off everyone is. I just want to make sure everything's represented in the regional plan. And are you happy with that? I mean, like, do you think it's sufficient? And is it sufficient from our side, you know?
Yeah, I think this question comes from the fact that we have that inspirational open space system map that's included in the commission's strategic plan.
Yeah.
And that identifies a lot of washes and connections that maybe are not directly identified to foots alignments.
Yeah,
But we don't have anything more specific than that. Like, so when we provided comments for the regional plan, we provided that map. But it seems like the regional plan is relying on the transportation management plan and like what.
Yeah.
What you have, so.
I feel like you and I started talking about this. We never finished that conversation, but maybe we should go back to that. Just compare notes.
Yeah.
Where you have open space connections planned and maybe.
Yeah, and obviously we're going to be working on a master plan at some point in the future, and that'll hopefully be more specific. But I think the question is like, is the regional plan good enough as it is it moves forward without that master plan being in place yet?
Now's the time to raise those.
Right.
So maybe we should.
Let's do that.
Sure. Early on, it was a matter of opportunity where the trails went in.
Yeah.
They happened to be city property, like the first trail, and so on. Or as a small development started, we can allow us to have an urban trail to access here and there. It was kind of one-on-one. Now we're talking about having to have a basic plan. But when you have a basic plan, but you don't have the development already, it seems like we're losing an opportunity to have small connectors here and there. There's a cul-de-sac and then there's a trail. Is there a way to get from that cul-de-sac to the trail? You can put that all on the plans ahead of time. So I'm wondering if the opportunities are still there to do that kind of thing.
Yeah, go to the next slide. That's a really good point. This is another part of the zoning code. These are really the kind of the 2 only parts of the zoning code that address foots trails. And what this one says, you can go down to the bottom. Development is required to provide connections to regional and urban trail systems when they abut a property or within 100 feet. So these are trail connections from the end of the cul-de-sac or whatever that are unplanned. Like we can't anticipate every one of them. So this gives us the ability to require those connections. I would say this is kind of in a way, a starting point. It would be really helpful to have guidance about, how often should we have connections? Like where should they be located? What should they look like? So that you don't link foots trails, et cetera, to get a little bit more predictability and functionality on those connections as well.
Do you feel that the definition in these 2 areas of the code only encourage foots on the perimeters of the property as opposed to going through the properties?
You guys have so many good questions. I think there's a slide coming up. That will address that. I think that's really good. So go to the, let's see.
Can I ask a clarification?
Sure.
Curious, so if a property of less to the Forest Service, there has to be a trail on the Forest Service that's within 100 feet? Or there could be access to the Forest Service in general?
I think that's one of those things that is not crystal clear in here, and we try to, interpret it to our advantage when, yeah. Is it the trail that's within 100 feet or the adjoining property that's within 100 feet? Yeah. Well, we can go through this one. The engineering standards have a whole section on Foots Trail that basically gives us direction on how they should be built. How wide, what are grades, what are the structural requirements, how thick is the concrete, what do shoulders look like, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then here, Commissioner Norton, this starts to get at your question, I think. Planning and alignment considerations when foots are part of private development. And we're starting with the assumption that it's always beneficial to have some sort of a greenway built in conjunction with a foots trail. It doesn't have to be like a really, really large greenway that supports, large wildlife migration. It can be really small, but it needs to be meaningful. And I think of the example of the Karen Cooper Trail, where it starts at the library, it goes through downtown, it follows the Rio. And, nobody would confuse that little greenway that it goes through with like high quality open space. I mean, they're like elm trees and it starts and stops. In some places it's only this wide, but it's super meaningful to have that greenway as part of it. And I think about Ponderosa Trails, where the trail goes through the middle of it, that greenway gets much, much wider. And that's a great experience as well, but that takes up a certain amount of land. Even the trail out on North 89, the trail's not right next to the highway. It kind of goes through, and there's some really big ponderosas. It's kind of a nice area. So those are three different examples of greenways. And again, I think, with careful planning, they can be meaningful without having to be super wide. When they serve that function, if we want them to also support wildlife or recreation or other things, I think, we have to think about it differently. I would contrast that maybe with, if you've been on the trail that goes right out behind here, behind Sportsman's, there's a gravel shoulder on one side and a gravel shoulder on the other side. Otherwise, it's railroad track and parking lot. And, let's not do any more of that. Let's provide a little bit better experience for foots users. And this goes back to that original thing where we're combining transportation and recreation. So even though that trail right out here, and I use it all the time, is great transportation. I can get to work. It'd be so much more pleasant if there were something, landscaping, a bush, I don't care, along the side of it, right? And you weren't next to parked cars and, trucks parked and whatever it is. Anyway, I got a little off track, but that's kind of the assumption. So our plan trails go across private development, and in a lot of cases they follow natural features, so hillsides, washes, and floodplain. And here the planning is a little bit easier because to some extent those features are regulated by the zoning code and have to be preserved. Additionally, a lot of times those are places that are impractical to develop, like for cost and just difficulty. And so they're left open anyway, and they tend to be linear, so they go across from one property to the next, and it becomes easier for us to plan foots trails that follow them. Now there are kind of some side issues with doing that. Hillsides look like that, so it's difficult to put a foots on it. Floodplains get wet sometimes and completely wash our trails out. But the basic part of it is there, and we can use that for planning. In other cases, this is that fourth bullet point. This really addresses your point. Trails are just a line kind of randomly across a piece of property. And in those cases, we really need to work with the developer to make sure that the trail is incorporated into the development in a meaningful way. And this goes back to what I was talking about before, that we call it a development. The people who live there 20 years from now will call it their neighborhood. And how does that neighborhood function for them? with foot trails that go through there? Are the trails accessible? Are they pushed off to the side? We really have very little in code or guidance or anything to give us footholds or things to rely on when we work with the developers. We're really just relying on kind of their ability or their willingness to recognize that foot trails and greenways are a huge benefit for their development. If we can't do that, if they want to push it off to the side, it becomes very difficult not to have that happen. A lot of times, in this the regional plan context, we talk about trails where the alignment across a development doesn't really matter as much as long as that connection is made. Don't believe that. I don't think that's true. I think that experience of how it connects with the development and goes across is really important. It's not just that it makes that connection so you can get to work within 20 minutes. It's how that connection is made, that experience of that trail and what it means, I think is meaningful.
I agree. What I see on developments that come our way are site plans, even when they're located in a master plan community. The foot trails are left to the greater outside, and they're not, even if they're developing small pockets of tracks inside, with a planned residential development, they're not taking the time to make that connection through what is a master plan development. But there's really no master plan if there's not a trail that connects through the middle. And I think that's the caveat of not allowing the delineation of these foot trails and bikeways on these private lands, is we lose that ability to say, don't forget, you need to, no matter how you choose to develop this in pieces, you need to have those trails going through. Because we're looking now at 400, 500, 600 acre parcels south of the 40 that aren't going to have anything through the middle potentially, if they can get away with it.
Yeah, it's a challenge. I mean, I would have told you that I think that the city needs to have stronger guidelines and regulations to, sort of guide how that gets done, to make sure that development does incorporate these trails in a meaningful way. It feels like a lot of our discussion lately has gone in the opposite direction. Just to be we can be candid, right? So we're recording.
I mean, it's a good point, and even to a couple of sessions back when we were talking about like the BBB tax, and I think also there was a presentation that enlightened us a bit more about some of the developments happening and how they aren't going to have like garages and parking or storage. I think I made the comment that there should be like trails where people can actually like opt to ride their bike versus or walk to a bus station. All these, like you said, meaningful connectors via the FUTs for people who walk or bike to work, and making it accessible so that it's not just like the lucky ones who live on the north side of the property or the development that get access to it easily, that it is something that's a little bit more equitable across the board. And it ties into our sustainability plans and all these other things. If people are walking and biking more, it improves air quality and
Makes housing work.
makes housing more affordable.
There's a lot of undeveloped tracks in a site plan, whether it's, like you said, a floodplain or it's not developable or whatever. And you're right, they're just left where potentially they could have provided a connector trail in some fashion. So I don't know what the answer is, except to require true master plan communities.
Yeah, there might be something that, again, regulations or guidelines that the city can have that kind of require planning for those areas that are left over, detention basins, drainage features, utility easements, all those kind of things. Can we be more clever about how they're used so they kind of add up to something, so that they're meaningful for the development, so that they maybe, create a continuous greenway that connects with a continuous greenway in the next parcel over. So there's land that's left, and it's not like parcels are getting completely developed, but how do we plan that so those things are tied together? That's a real challenge. Okay, how's our time, you guys? Okay. I really appreciate your, all the questions. You're asking really good questions. Here's a couple, again, we have a map, but here's some big private developments that are going on. I'm sure you'll recognize some of the names, all of which have foot trails that are planned as part of them. We'll see a map toward the end. So that brings us to the last category, which is the projects that we build just as foot trails that are standalone. They're not part of another capital project. They're not part of a private development. These are the ones we have to budget and plan for as city projects. And we begin by prioritizing them. There's a whole lot of them out there as potential ones. We want to make sure that we're building the most important ones first. We look at 4 factors. Generators and attractors are things that generate and attract walking and biking trips, like schools, parks, transit stops, high-density neighborhoods, commercial centers, that sort of thing. Social factors are conditions that make it more likely that people will walk or bike. We look at things like concentrations of elderly populations, neighborhoods with children, non-white areas, people with limited English proficiency, low-income areas, that sort of thing. It's kind of the social aspect of it. Need and functionality is what will the function of that trail be, and is there kind of an express need already for it? So we can look, for example, is there already a social trail that people are using because they find that connection useful? Have people told us in surveys it would be really handy to have a trail connection here? So those are the things that go into that factor. And then finally, completion and connectivity is it finish a missing segment of trail that is complete on either end? Does it connect to new neighborhoods? How does it fit into the overall system and help us tie all foots together? And so those are, each one of those 4 things get a score. We add them up and then divide priorities into first, second, third, and fourth. And the reality of funding is that we work on the first priority. So that, second, sometimes the third and fourth are kind of beyond our funding horizons, which is more than 20 years out. So next slide. This is actually what it looks like from red, orange through light blue and dark blue. First, second, third, fourth priority. So again, most of the red ones are the ones that we work on first, and then some of the orange ones. You want to stare at that up for a moment, or should we go?
Stare at it for a moment.
These available. They are. I'll provide the links to Robert for him to share.
Great, thank you. The potential for going under 66 near the underpass, the Read the Flag project.
Right by City Hall.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that still alive and well? I mean, it was going to be an actual bike pedestrian underpass there.
Yes. I think it might be really hard to see on there, but it is it's there. Yeah.
But to be a north-south, following the Rio.
Yeah. One maybe clarification to make is the trails that show up in color are only the ones that are implemented as standalone projects. There's a really light dash line if it's going to be built by private development or built as part of a capital. So the one that you referenced, Nat, is going to be built as part of the Rio to Flag in the downtown mile.
Oh, I see.
It wouldn't necessarily
Be on there.
show up in the color. Yeah.
Okay, so Martin, the issue we have then is these planned foots trails are things that we can conceptualize, but they don't fall into any of the categories, so they can't be ranked because they're all on private property. Is that right? I mean, these dotted ones, oh, you can't see my mouse. The dotted ones where the new developments are going in.
Yeah, generally the ones that are on private property. If it's a large undeveloped piece of private property, the foots trail is waiting for that property to develop. Like we wouldn't go in ahead of time and build a foots trail. We wait for development to occur and then plant foots as part.
Okay, so the yellow one that's there, I guess to the southeast of the interstate, that ranked out because it met all the 4 qualifications and it came in pretty high, but is that one on private that's not currently developed? Or is that where the 4th Street, is that where the new extension of the road is gonna be?
The first case, we were actually working for a time with Little America on getting a temporary easement for that trail.
Uh-huh.
And so we would, in that case, we would have built it in advance of Little America developing. That concept is probably no longer valid, and that we may change the status of that trail as a result. Then with the one through the Bow and Arrow Wash.
But as they develop, they're still required to provide a foot's trail through those properties.
Correct. As long as it's on the general plan, yeah.
Okay, so those ones are on that orange is on the trail plan and they will be required to build it, right?
It is on, it is on the current trail plan, the one that's adopted, and it is on the draft proposed trail plan for the next regional plan,
Okay.
which isn't adopted yet.
Right, so the ones that are not on the proposed updated regional plan are the dotted planned ones, the light gray ones, right? That this is where we have an issue.
She's talking about the Foots plan, I think, like these first.
Lines. The legend, the top one. Are
Yeah.
those officially in the plan as well?
Yes.
The forest, as you know, the Forest Service is working on a plan above the Linda Vista area and the Forest Service land.
Yeah.
Going right across the top there, that's gonna be a significant connector. One of the challenges will be north-south connecting to it because of the development that's already there. But I don't know if you could mention that, whether people know about that or not.
Yeah, so that's in that area between the city and the base of Mount Eldon.
Yeah.
Yeah, going up all the way up to Lookout. So the Forest Service applied for a planning grant to develop an alignment for, they call it the Mount Eldon Urban Trail. It would be built with, aggregate material, not 10 feet wide, but more like 4 or 5 feet wide. So, nice for commuting as a cyclist or for walking. It wouldn't have rocks or roots or technical aspects. It would be more of kind of intended as a commuter trail and to provide that connection.
Is it intended as a fire break? Is that the purpose of it?
I think a lot of it follows the pipeline, so there is already.
There's already heavy usage there. It's just very spider webby from social trails. So creating something that's more consistent and cohesive throughout, I think, is the plan. That was kind of what I was thinking earlier when I mentioned Sunnyside and those neighborhoods is like what you just said, Nat, having something like from 4th Street or Cedar, something that makes sense to connect the center of those neighborhoods to the other surrounding Foots access points. So it's also probably, like you said, something that goes along with what the city has planned and ADOT. So
Yeah, I think we should be open to, new ideas, and that Forest Service is kind of a different standard than we're used to with the Foots Trail. Are there other opportunities like that? In other words, do we have to build a full Foots, or can we get some functionality out of something that fits that?
just back to like bikeways and bike lanes, like you were mentioning, like creating cohesiveness and creating, what's the right word I'm looking for? Just avenues where cyclists, that whether they're commuters or they're recreational, don't have to stop and figure out, wait, where does this go now? Because I've been on an established bike trail and now I'm at a stoplight and there's nowhere to go.
Yeah.
Shit. That happens a lot, actually.
Yeah.
On the sign, just says bike trail closed.
Yeah.
They don't do that for a car, they give a detour. But for a bike lane, it's just closed.
We should need to update our signs, it says, instead of just trail ends. Trail ends, good luck.
Yeah. But bikeways should have a priority, I mean, in themselves as a functional, all-season transportational element. And it's a different type of planning. Obviously, you follow the routes that are available. But it just seems like they're being conflated in the regional plan, and I don't like it.
Right? I don't, did I answer the questions or? Okay. So here's how, the next step in implementation is getting, our prioritized trails into the capital plan. The 5-year capital plan is a document that the city produces every year. It's an annual process. It covers a 5-year time frame. The first year of the capital plan is our budget policy for next year. So if we have something in the capital plan for next year, it means when July 1st, start of fiscal year rolls around, we have money in the budget for that. And I think, Councilmember, you're soon to approve the city's budget. Part of that.
In about a month, yeah. About a month from now.
Okay. Years 2 through 5 in the capital plan are planning years. So this gives us an idea of when projects are coming up. And if under ideal circumstances, when we get to next year, all the things that were in year 2 would be part of our budget request. Year 3, et cetera. It doesn't always work out that way. Things change. We don't get to things as quickly. Escalate, that sort of thing. So while it's a planning document, it does change, from year to year. I think as a planning document, sometimes we use it to say, somebody's interested in when a particular trail or a crossing is going to get built. If we can point to it in one of the out years of the capital plan, that means it's kind of on its way. It may not be exactly in 3 years, if it's shown in the 3rd year, but it's sometime in the time frame of 2 to 5 years. If that makes sense. So it's planning for us, kind of on a fiscal level, but also managing or expressing expectations for the community about when these projects are coming up and how we're spending the public's money. So if whenever we want to build a trail, we have to put it in the capital plan first. So these are usually our priorities. Here's the slide we had about revenue sources. We have a couple. Prop 419 was approved in 2018. It's the transportation sales tax. We originally had a $29 million set aside for foots, trails, bikeways, sidewalks, crossings. Who thinks $29 million is a really big number? It is, but things are really expensive to build. Fortunately, the revenue projections from that tax were way ahead of what we thought we would be making. So we have a lot more money. Simultaneously, things cost way more than we thought they would. So do they balance? Do we have more money? Do we have less money? Grants have historically been a significant part of building foots trails. Until the last couple of years, grants were harder to come by. In the last couple of years, there have been more grants for kind of walking and biking projects. That's changing again. I think with the new administration in Washington, walking and biking grants are being deprioritized, basically. So grants are kind of up and down. It's been even in the heyday of grants, which was maybe 2-3 years ago, it was more difficult to get grants for construction projects and easier to get grants for planning projects. And we really want to get grants for construction projects. And part of the reason is that a grant for a plan could be a couple $100,000. Decent grant for a construction project is in the millions of dollars. It's just like a whole difference in the scale of what one cost. BBB, in the early days of BBB, we got construction money for foots trails. BBB originally was set up to have a capital component and maintenance component. And over years, as the capital component built stuff, the maintenance component went up. And now in terms of foot trails, we have no capital and all maintenance from BBB. But we appreciate that, the money that we do get for that maintenance. So go to the next slide. Here are the trails that we have planned, and as part of the capital plan. So again, these are standalone projects, and I think we have maps right after this. So let's take a. Okay, so here, green is the trails, the existing trails. Purple are the trails that we're kind of working with that are active private development projects. Generally, it's Canyon del Rio, kind of the Symmetry, Juniper Point area, if you're familiar with that. Yeah, thank you. Timber Sky, kind of to the west along Woody Mountain Road. And then the one that you're at is Lake Mary Housing. We're going to go to the next slide. We can layer in capital projects. These are in blue. So 4th and Butler is on there, the Lone Tree Overpass, Beulah University Roundabout. There's a little tiny dot that is the Florence Walnut Underpass. Yeah, that's part of the downtown mile. And then we could have included the trails downtown that connect by City Hall to where the new DCC building is on the south side of the tracks, which would be the capital project for them is the Rio de Flag and the downtown mile. And if you go, yep.
A little blue dot, is that near Oak Street?
Florence on the south side, Walnut on the town side.
So that's actually might happen.
It actually might happen.
That dates back 30 years,
Yeah.
at least.
Nice.
Amazing.
Someday, Nat, you and I will walk over there. And we'll walk through from one side to the other, and it'll just be a confusing experience for us.
And then the heavy line that's north of Butler, south of 66, kind of to the right of downtown, right there, yeah. Like
That's the Lone Tree Overpass. So there's like the main trail along the overpass, and then a couple of side trails that connect out to south side. And then a trail further down that connects to like O'Leary Street and Sawmill. And then go one more slide, we can layer in the Foots projects in orange. And you can start to see how they all connect. So Commissioner Joyce, you asked about the blue ones for the Lone Tree Overpass. You can see how the orange ones connect at either end. Like we can take that Lone Tree Overpass and potentially we have a project going to connect it over to campus and to the end of Mountain View. And north of there, if you go north of 66, there's that orange kind of reverse L-shaped. And we're working on a concept of connecting that to 66. It's a relatively short distance, but there's like 30 feet of red cliff in between. Right there, yeah. But if you think about that, like even just the overpass, you've got the trail on 66. You could turn onto Lone Tree and take a trail all the way down and get into the NAU campus. And then if we're able to get that northern part, you could go north across 66. It happens to be where the overpass comes out. There'll be a signalized intersection, so a good place for a crossing. When you get up that red cliff, you could go onto the Schweitzer Canyon Trail, then really all the way up to Buffalo Park, like in that direction. So that little bit of connection right there is kind of really compelling for the whole system of getting over. You know, I started by saying I'm a transportation planner. These are really transportation connections, but I'm sure people will use it for recreation. We won't discourage that or prohibit it.
Is the lower bright pink business, is that through the Pine Canyon Extension?
Yes. It's I think Symmetry. I'm not sure what names it all goes by.
Yeah.
They're just kind of winding up, like kicking off their development, basically.
That's
We don't, the pink lines, we don't really we don't control when private development happens, so
Yeah.
they may get phased in over a number of years, it may get delayed for a number
I
of.
think they have a development application in. I mean, we haven't seen it. You may have, but I'm assuming that that's part of their first development of their extension of Pine Canyon.
Yeah.
The purple along Lake Mary Road. Physically, what is that talking about?
So there was on, do you know that with the County Island?
Yeah.
I don't know what's the name of it, Frontier Homes, maybe? The council approved multifamily development in that area as part of a rezoning.
Yeah.
And the developer offered, the council accepted their offer to include a condition to build a foot trail out to it. You know, to get, because it's kind of remote.
Would that be off? Lake Mary Road, follow the old railroad track? path?
Working on that, hopefully. You know, that one of the challenges, if you get off of Lake Mary Road, you're into the Forest Service and
Yeah.
it's a different set of permits, but I think that would be preferable, again, going back to the experience, than to have a trail right along Lake Mary Road.
I think it is further up, north of JW Palace,
Yeah.
right next to the road.
Especially out there, because people like to use Lake Mary Road for running and biking, and there's a wide shoulder all the way out to
That's great.
practically Jacob's Lake at this point with what the county's done. And I think people are okay being on the shoulder there, like having a foot's right next to it doesn't seem to be very compelling to me. We'll see how that turns out. Okay, keep going. Yes.
I have a bunch and you promised you could keep us busy until 9 o'clock, but we do have a little bit more business to do, so.
Okay. These are just other things that we include in the capital budget. I'll just mention the top one. We're planning on resurfacing all the asphalt foots, many of which desperately need it. Go to the next slide. We can skip this. We have other kinds of trail features that kind of make a more robust network, and I've got maps that show this. So let's go through those, and I think that's the end. Single track access trails are where we might have a foots plan, but really the function of the trail is to provide a connection between the foot system in the city and trails in the forest. And because foots are expensive to build, can we use a single track trail? Because that's kind of what the function it's serving anyway, and they're much less expensive. So we have money in the budget for that. We're working on a few of those. Next one is forest access points. And this is really just an exercise of planning where these already occur, where they need to occur, and making sure that we're protecting access to the forest from existing neighborhoods and future neighborhoods as Flagstaff develops. And then we have, next map is trailheads, and then the one after that is really kind of a regional effort, and it's can we plan for trail access out to outlying communities? And you can see Belmont, Fort Valley, Donny Park, Cosnino, Kachina, Mountain Arrow, all represented here. And part of this is we regularly get requests like, wouldn't it be nice to extend a foots trail out to the outlying community? I think it would be great. It's just as, the county has to be part of it. And it's really expensive. I think the rest of it is just on how we coordinate across the region with other agencies. Sylvia and Robert are heavily involved in all this. And I think the last slide is just a map of the Arizona Trail in blue and the Flagstaff Loop Trail in orange. Well, thanks for letting me ramble on. I appreciate all your.
Thank you so much.
thoughtful questions.
Thank you for
Thank you for
fielding all of the
questions.
questions. Thanks.
Thank you for hanging in there all these years.
You guys are easy.
Reports and updates. First
Wait,
is,
I have a question for Martin.
yes.
Can I just
Why-
ask
why-
Martin, like, how can we help you? Like, you've done so much work and you have these visions, and I just want to make sure that every time we speak to, you know, whatever capacity we're speaking with or to or from, that how do we help you? I mean, I'm sure a lot of these ideas, well, maybe they're public, but maybe they're not public, or, you know, how can we support you with these concepts?
Well, I think it starts with, Robert and I being, and Sylvia being kind of your staff people, kind of working on it. And these are really the issues that you're here to tackle is kind of, open space planning and greenway planning. And again, since Foots and open space kind of go hand in glove, the more we can sort of share information, talk about things like when the regional plan is going on right now and what's the role of the commission in reviewing that and providing information. I think just, continuing to plan and share information and make sure that we're all in lockstep.
Okay.
You're
And
the sounding board for open space for the community. I mean, we are the staff, we get things done, but you're sort of the sounding board. You help us out with that.
Okay, well, I just want to make sure we are helping. And so there's this meeting coming up next week and we'll help. Or I will. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you.
I might add to your question there, Commissioner Thomas, that, we're hopefully going to be going through the master planning process for open space too. So I think like including Mark in the master planning process to make sure that like the foots overlaps, like where we have priorities for open space. We have the 3 different categories of open space, the regional preserves, complementary open space, but obviously connectors like is closely tied to the foots.
Okay.
Thank you. Reports and updates. Representative Spence.
Yeah, I appreciate having the chance to be the liaison between City Council and Open Space Commission. And I'm just starting to get my head around all the things that you folks do. Picture Canyon, for instance, I was on the what do we call it?
Don Weaver Trail?
Yeah. Walking the new alignment of the Don Weaver Trail. And I did give the council an update on how that effort is going along and how much that has to be approved by the state level agencies. And then the Observatory Mesa, I've kept them, the other council members informed that that trail plan is coming to the council for advice and recommendations. And of course, tomorrow is the big day. So a lot of our community members are weighing in on, don't you dare do this, and you must do this. So it's going to be a lively meeting tomorrow afternoon on Observatory Mesa. And finally, McMillan Mesa, Buffalo Park, there hasn't been any real current activity except what nature has provided us. About a week ago, I was riding my bike across Cedar Hill, and there I saw a herd of deer, and one of them was pure white. So if any of you have not seen that albino deer as part of the herd, I have picked some good pictures. Come see me afterwards. It's so exciting to see, and it just helps me realize what a beautiful community we have to be surrounded by open space and what we've been able to preserve. North Mesa has now produced this beautiful white deer. So that's my report, and come see me if you haven't. Is there anybody here who has not seen the deer in person?
I haven't seen it.
I've seen pictures on Facebook, but
Well, I've got some good pictures. See me afterwards. Thank you.
Planning and zoning.
yeah, I have quite a bit for tonight. I'll try to make it as succinct as possible. It's been very busy lately, and as we know and has been shared, the JW Pal Specific Plan Open House is Wednesday. So please share it with your circles. I think a lot of us feel that it is sort of the last frontier of large parcel green space to be developed, and how it's planned and developed really does affect everybody in the community. And most of our open space commission top priorities are located in this particular region. So it's important to us that we get all the information that we can, and that we have a voice as the public, as our commission, on things that we see that concern us. And I think some of the trails and wildlife corridors really need our voice, need our support. So, hope everybody will attend and share it widely. Also at Planning and Zoning, our next two meetings, Wednesday, we have a work session, followed by later in the month is a public hearing regarding the proposed resource protection overlay pilot program. So that's sort of a test program to treat the resource protection overlay in a different manner. You might want to tune into that and voice your opinions on that, on how you see that working. And then the last big thing that I wanted to talk about was, as a member of Planning and Zoning, we got to be part of the regional plan retreat with City Council and all of the County Board of Supervisors and the Planning and Zoning Commission for the county. And what it was is, this was the most recent version of revisions. The revised plan has not been published yet. So we were working on whatever the revisions that they're working on. That's what we were weighing in on. And most of it focused on centered on the understanding of those revisions that were in process, talking about the goals and policies, the future growth illustration with the land use map, and then the trail delineation, which we kind of touched on today a little bit. There's two core priorities that have risen to the top of the regional plan, and that's housing, attainability, and equity, and climate. And so the four complementary secondary priorities is where we find open space in the sense of natural and cultural resources, walkable mixed-use community, resilient public services and facilities, and a healthy economy. They are rewriting some chapters, the supporting chapters, which will follow the heart of the regional plan, which is the goals and policies and the growth and land use. So our chapter 8 that we all reviewed on parks, recreation, and open space is got some major rewrites in the works. And what they've decided to do is take all the implementation guidelines out of those chapters where there was duplication of concept. They're moving them into the goals and policies, and then also creating sort of a sidebar within the chapter for best practices. So there's a lot of shifting of the things that we reviewed and read as well as commented on. And I really believe that those sections of the regional plan, which are supported by a city section and their commissions, should get another review of it. And I don't know if we will in a formal way. I think that we may not have the same opportunity as we did like in December. And if we don't, I think it's going to be really important that we give our comments as individuals and try to, on our own, provide comments as a commission. And I'll revisit the timeline of how this is all going down in just a second here. But there were some things that we previously commented on that I think we need to continue to support and ask for. And one of those was the discussion that we had here with Martin, and I'm so glad you were here today, and about that deeper review and comparison of our foots maps and the trail delineations that we use as part of our strategic plan, and making sure that the regional plan maps are reflective of everything that is aspirational for us, because we don't have a master plan right now to fall back on, like some of the other departments have their own strategic plan or a master plan. We don't have that. So if it's not in the regional plan, it's really more difficult to enforce, or allow for guidance of future development. In one of the overlays in the regional plan on the map, south of the 40, it reads that there's a need for a regional park. And I think it should say regional park and open space. And I think we might have commented on that. So I think Robert had already checked to see if that could be added or was intended to be added, and it might be so. I expressed concerns about the land use categories that were overlaid into the John Wesley Powell corridor. So this meeting, this open house on Wednesday here the timing is really perfect. There's that area that surrounds Hoffman Tank along JW Powell that now has been labeled for an intended use, land use as suburban center, which is the highest density in a suburban area, inviting 29 units per acre plus of mixed use. And yet that area is also like one of our number one top priorities that we hoped would be preserved or at least taken into account. So those are some questions and concerns that I have. So it's the Symmetry property and what was the Gibson property, which is now referred to as an LLC called Elk Ridge LLC. So I think the input of this commission and the public we need to use our voices. I think some of the we're losing a little bit of influence as it trickles on down the approval stage, and I would sure like us to, regain some of that. The timeline of how this is going to happen is the final draft of the regional plan. It's going to be published in August. It's going to come to planning and zoning for a citizen review at the end of August. In September, it's public hearings in front of planning and zoning. And then it goes to city council in October for their review and possible adoption, in the sense of that they would vote it to go to an election in May to be approved by the voters. So there's a very tight timeline of when that final version is going to be released, and whether it be commissions, public outreach, all that happens before it, in essence, gets the stamp of approval from city council. So I'd like to suggest that we put on a future agenda item for August, the end of August, and maybe even September as well, that whether we're asked formally in the form of Sarah visiting us again or sending us a memo to provide input, or doing it on our own as a commission, that we take that opportunity to review our section again and provide comment.
Is it beneficial to have it sooner than August?
Well, they're not going to release the new plan until like early August sometime before that first citizen review in front of planning and zoning. So it's not a lot of time, and being that we only meet monthly, I think it's something we need to get ahead of. And as soon as it's published, maybe, Robert lets us know it's out, start reading our applicable chapters and see what we think of it. And so that we're ready to provide written comment at that meeting. So
When you say suburban center, is that like a shopping area in the middle of a housing development, basically?
It's all meant to be along the JW Powell Road, in essence, or that region, that corner. The road alignment kind of goes along and then starts to turn up into Canyon del Rio. So it's down at that bottom sort of swing corner that right now they've got an overlay for suburban center. And I'm not really quite understanding why it's right there.
Not a watershed?
Well, yeah.
I'll just do this map there for you.
Yeah, thanks. So I can point, where we're talking. It's, it's this right here. So this is the state land piece that Cemetery has, and this is right above it is what was called the Gibson property. So, and Hoffman Tank is like right in there someplace without seeing topographic information. So those are my concerns.
Yeah, if you don't mind if I just add.
Yeah, go ahead.
Like, just for clarification, what Commissioner Norton is talking about is this corridor that comes down from the I-40 wetlands down to the Forest Service was identified by the commission as like being the top priority for a connection, since there's no formal connection going down to the Forest Service area. And so this map is from the regional plan. And so I think Commissioner Norton is suggesting that the commission take another stab at taking a look at the regional plan once it's updated. And then the specific plan meeting is looking at planning for this specific area right now. So they're taking public comment on what they want this area, what the community wants this area to more or less look like.
Does Hoffman Tank have water currently?
It's, what, does it have water currently? What is it called?
The Hoffman Tank area,
Yeah, it's-
there is a wash there. It's not identified, I don't think, as like a floodplain, so very little would be protected during the development process, if any, because it is actually not designated as floodplain. So that's one of the reasons it was identified as a high priority by this commission, because it really require us to like actively participate and potentially purchase a piece. So we have $1 million from the 2004 bond fund remaining. This commission elected that we set aside for this priority, for this connective priority. That's what I would do.
Thank you.
Yeah, planning and zoning, the Wednesday night thing here?
Yeah.
Is 5:30 to 7:30, right, correct?
Thank you.
And is this one of those events where we go around and put stickers on, or is it are we listening to a meeting, or are we going around and making written comments and correlating them with other things?
I don't know exactly what the meeting looks like. The first meeting that was for the immediate landowners in the area was accepting written comments. And so I think it would be a benefit to actually have written comments for the public record. So
It's advertised as an open house, like stations, but I would imagine there's probably similar to other open house type things that we've gone to, where there's probably, hopefully, forums to provide written comment.
Okay, thanks.
Robert, help me in.
okay, absolutely.
Nope. Volunteer.flagstaffaz.gov. It's all on there.
Pros Monthly Newsletter.
No?
Thank you for that. Yeah, there's the flyer about the open house. And Robert sent that out to us last week.
Yeah, so this is my to from item for.
Okay. So to and from,
This is just me mentioning again that we have this open house meeting. It is here at the Aquaplex. So you can kind of see the outline for the study area. And here's the connection of John Wesley Powell over to 4th Street. And the party connection for spaces is within this boundary. Thanks.
any other items to and from? I have one. I'm now pretty confused about when we are meeting again, because regular fourth Monday schedule seems to have.
Yeah, we did have to change this month's meeting as Memorial Day. Our typical meeting fell on, but it should return to the 4th Monday of the month, I believe. So
It'll be a few weeks, maybe.
June 23rd.
June 23rd, yes.
I also wanted to mention about my to to from item is that we did have Open Space Commission quorum announced for tomorrow's meeting. And the city council, if you're interested in attending that for the Great Observatory Mesa Trail Plan. And for the item on Wednesday here. So feel free to attend.
You mentioned, did you need to know in advance if we're going to go? So
I assumed that, so I have announced it. Possible for those meetings.
Robert, when we get up, if we get up to speak, would we say, would we let them know that we're on the Open Space Commission, or do we just talk as the public?
I think you can let them know that you are on the commission.
Okay.
But I think that your comment will have to be individual because this commission didn't vote on like what you're saying. So it'd have to be, it'd have to come from you as an individual, but you can certainly say that you're on the commission, but you're like making a comment as a person citizen.
As a private citizen. Okay, thank you.
I always feel like adding on to that, like when I've made comments about things at city council, there seems to be, I don't want to cross that line where obviously I'm giving perspective as a citizen. I'm on a commission. My input, my frame of reference is from that commission's work. Can you kind of address that?
Yeah, I think it's okay for you to state like, that the commission has identified this area as a top priority for connectivity and for open space corridor. I think when you're formulating your opinion on it, it should come from your citizen. Feel free to draw on the knowledge from this commission.
Okay, so I could say something like, currently there's 24 miles of trail on Observatory Mesa that's, not planned. And a little bit of it is. And we are suggesting 27 miles of planned trail and getting rid of current trail. And that's something that the commission is aware of. And as a private citizen, I'm very supportive of that plan.
Yeah, that sounds like a fine comment to me. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Also, I just wanted to say, I peeked at your presentation on the supporting documents to the meeting tomorrow, and it's excellent. And I think it was really clear. I mean, after all the iterations that we've gone through, it was really clear how we got there. So great work.
Future agenda items?
Yeah, so I did hear when Mary was doing her update that we might want to consider putting a regional plan review again opportunity on a future agenda item for August and September. We have majority support for that.
August meetings.
Who would like that to be on a future agenda item? 2, 3, just 3? We need 15, yes. Need to be support probably not.
What tomorrow?
We're not voting, but if we can just get a show of hands.
For the August meeting to have review of the
Oh,
Regional plan?
regional plan. August open spaces.
Yes, sounds good.
That's the only future agenda item I have currently, but if there's anything else that the commission wants to see, yeah, happy to try to put it on there. I think, I can't remember, maybe it was you, Commissioner Fox, that you said that maybe an update on the Hidden Hollow axis. Would be, or we put on a future agenda item. Is there anything else that the commission would like to see?
The Hidden Hollow, if we could just make that a continuing. Anything else? I don't have to vote on this. Meeting is adjourned.
Okay.
Robert, don't.
The one definition.
You probably were on your other business, other title, huh? Really, I guess my question was,